Hey guys, this is Nathanael Molnár from Movie Night Tonight. I'm just doing this quick little preface because I don't know what happens, but when we were recording this week's episode, there was something up with one of the mics, and so when you listen to this, Matt Smith can't be heard quite as well as Julia and I. I've played around with it a lot, I've tried to fix it, but unfortunately there doesn't seem to be anything I can do. I'm deeply sorry that it's like that. There's not much I can do. Hopefully, in the future, we'll be able to fix this problem so that this doesn't happen again. So again, sorry for the inconvenience. Sorry if it sounds a little strange going from my volume and Julia's volume to Matt's, but there's not much I can do about it. So again, sorry about that, and I hope you enjoy this installment of Movie Night Tonight. Well, hello and welcome to the Movie Paradise. I am your host, Nathanael Molnár, and this is Movie Night Tonight. Every single week we talk about a new film in depth, full spoiler discussion, with each month having a new theme. This month we're starting off our brand new theme because it is the month of December, and we are talking about holiday movies. And the film we are discussing tonight is It's a Wonderful Life. I am your host, Nathanael Molnár, joined by a great panel today. I have with me Julia Spots.
Hey, what's going on?
And Matt Smith. Hello. So, we watched It's a Wonderful Life. And this is the first one for Movie Night Tonight that I have not seen myself before. I had not seen It's a Wonderful Life before, and this is kind of going into first impressions a little bit. Just a little. I had not seen the movie before, and so it's very interesting to watch it. But I'd like to start with you, Julia. How many times roughly have you seen It's a Wonderful Life, and what are your first impressions of the film?
So I was telling everybody last night, I have actually never seen this movie. The only impression I had of this movie is that my dad always talks about how the main character tries to kill himself, and I'm worried about my father.
Yes, to reiterate, it is a spoiler discussion.
Yeah.
Just to reiterate for the audience. But yes, James Stewart killing himself.
Yeah, pray for Mike, but as I was saying, this is my first time seeing it, and I liked it a lot. Especially that it didn't have a lot of politics in it. It was just a happy and very, very sad movie at the same time.
Yeah, that's a very astute way to put it. Happy and sad at the same time. Matt, how many times have you seen It's a Wonderful Life, roughly, in first impressions?
How many times have I seen this movie? I mean, a lot.
Yes, that's a quantifiable number.
We have
Once, maybe every 2 or 3 Christmases, maybe?
Okay.
I don't know.
so we have an expert
Yes.
here, and then 2 novices.
Yes. Would you say double digits?
No. Let's see, I'm 20 years old and I divide that. No, probably not double digits.
Okay. You've seen it a whole bunch.
I've seen it plenty of times. And talking about first impressions is kind of weird. I just feel like I should just be able to say, It's a Wonderful Life, and everyone knows what I talk about. But no.
Well, I
definitely
mean-
like it. And yeah, it's probably one of my favorite Christmas movies. I don't watch a lot of Christmas movies, except ones that I watch every year. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's good. It's up there.
I feel like this could be a yearly Christmas movie for me.
Yeah.
I don't see it as that much of a Christmas movie.
No,
It doesn't
it's not.
give me that much of a Christmas vibe. It's not okay, first of all, the Polar Express sucks. It's not a good movie. It's boring.
Oh, come on. You don't like 1,000 Tom Hankses?
Ooh, trains. I'm not interested in that. But I like It's a Wonderful Life because I don't care about the Christmas genre. I'm not going to sit down, get in my jams and watch Christmas movies
With some hot
anyone.
cocoa?
Yeah, exactly. I'm that real type. So the fact that it's not very Christmassy and it has an actual story plot,
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool. I like it.
Yeah. We'll get into a little bit later the interesting reason of why it is held and regarded as a Christmas classic. Not for the reason many people would think,
Don't
to those who
worry.
are unaware.
I read it.
Yeah. So we will be getting into that in a little bit. But my first impressions as I led off, I had not seen this film before, so this was my first time watching It's a Wonderful Life. And I definitely really liked this movie. Mm-hmm. It was not at all what I thought it was going to be. It was a very, very radically different film than what I was expecting.
Can I ask what you were expecting?
So it's kind of hard because the only thing I really knew about the actual movie itself, I knew it was called It's a Wonderful Life,
Okay.
and I knew it was a Christmas classic. and that's about it.
All right.
I didn't know the specifics of the story. Well, I didn't know any of that, so to get this really kind of real-life drama,
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that at all.
Had you seen the every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings, like the kid at the end in the tree?
I hadn't
I
seen...
feel like that's probably one of the most iconic.
I've
heard that phrase before.
Yeah, I've heard the
'Cause
phrase.
I feel like that's one of the most like iconic, screen frames of the movie is that frame, and it doesn't say anything about the movie at all. But that's like what I've seen.
Well, did they make that up? Was that like the movies thing, or was that just a thing that everybody said in the 40s?
I have no idea.
I feel like
Yeah,
we're old enough to where it could be, but I feel like they.
It must have
Yeah.
been something before the movie.
Yeah, like
It
I
must
feel
have.
like
Probably
that
is.
would be really weird for a movie to just be like, okay, guys, we're just gonna put this weird fact about angels' wings in
I
here.
feel like the reason everyone knows it now is because.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's probably the more likely
Popular.
case. Yeah, it kind of brought that phrase into the public culture and everyone.
Yeah.
The phrase is like way older, but.
Yeah, that would be my guess. But back to your question of I don't really know what I was expecting. I just wasn't expecting what we got, but I liked what we got.
Yeah.
So, getting right into it, I think, one of the things that immediately stood out to me that really intrigued me about this film was the way that it was told. And this is going back to, I didn't know this going into the film, that it was told, or at least most of the movie is told from the perspective of, at the very beginning, the James Stewart character, George Bailey. It takes place in heaven, and we find out through the angels in heaven that George Bailey is going to kill himself. And so Clarence, George's guardian angel, needs to get freshened up on what his life was like. And so that's how we start the movie, and we see George's life throughout the years through this perspective of through Clarence watching it, and then Clarence comes back into the story at the end. I thought that was so intriguing. Mm-hmm. Such an interesting way to structure the film.
I absolutely love that scene because it is just a still shot of the sky, and they just like light up when they start speaking.
Yeah. It was such a creative, because obviously for 1946, there wasn't too much you could have done special effects wise. So it's such a creative way to get that point across.
And then when Clarence comes later and he's just a person,
Mm-hmm.
and like it's just that like, I think the fact that we don't see like what he looks like at the beginning just makes it when he actually shows up.
Yeah.
You realize that he's been here the whole time and we've just been watching it with him.
Yeah. I just thought it was so creative, the whole the design of the film and the way that it's all told, and it immediately makes it more intriguing, and it adds this kind of fantastical element to it. I think if the movie had just opened with, say, when George's brother falls through the ice, and then it just goes to George's life and you just watch it there, I think you would lose a ton of people because they... maybe in today's context, they're expecting some sort of Christmas movie. Maybe not necessarily in 1946 when it comes out, but in today's context, they're expecting some sort of Christmas movie, and then the whole movie is this kind of real-life, heavy, dramatic drama. But adding this fantastical element to it just immediately makes it all the more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I was just gonna say, to add to that, that makes the way it like works in his hearing, like he can't hear. Like that small little point that like actually matters throughout the story.
Yeah.
It's told just because he jumped into water and saved his brother. And then like later on we're still talking about that, but we wouldn't, that's actually not important to the story at all, but it adds to how they're telling it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, there's only one part that they really bring it up, and that's when he was never born and he's like, I can hear.
Yeah. I kind of forgot that it happens,
There's
to
the
be
other
honest.
one
Yeah.
Towards the beginning with
I didn't know.
Mary when they're both kids.
Yeah.
And he's leaning over and she goes like, is You can't hear him? George Bailey, I'll never stop loving you until the day I die. And he gets up like he didn't, because he didn't hear it or anything.
Couldn't you, like, hear it from the other ear, though? Let's be real here.
Well, if you're... I don't know. I've never been deaf in one ear.
I'd also like to bring up that the guy who plays Clarence was born in 1874. Can you believe it?
1874.
I was sitting there watching the movie, Googling the characters, finding out when these people were born. We got 1874 and 1878 as the top ones.
It's old.
It's real old.
Yeah. But anyways, I just thought that was a very creative way to introduce us to the story. And I love the fantasy element of this because it does kind of... I would describe it as I had a very different impression of this movie for the first 2 acts than I did the third act. The first 2 acts is all of George Bailey's life. And I was watching it, and I was intrigued and I was interested. But I wouldn't say I was necessarily gripped to like the screen. I wasn't glued to. I wasn't like enraptured in what was going on screen. Yeah, I didn't feel like that, but I was interested. And then as soon as it kind of somewhat sort of brings it back to the beginning, and he is about to jump off the bridge, and then Clarence shows up, and then he goes back and sees what his life is like if he hadn't been born. That I was glued to the screen that entire time.
In the beginning, when I walked in, I came in late. Mm-hmm. George Bailey's a really weird guy, and
he is a bit awkward.
It kind of like deterred me from wanting to watch at first. Mm-hmm. I was like, this guy's like erratic and weird, and if I met him on the street, I would ask him where his like mother is. Yeah. He just was weird. Like in the scene with Mary, he's weird. Yeah. And it kind of deterred me, but as time went on, and especially after he jumped off the bridge, then I was like, all right, so this is an interesting movie. Yeah,
that's kind of how I felt. I don't think I necessarily... I mean, I think he was a little bit quirky. I wouldn't... I don't think I share your sentiment to the same degree as you about George Bailey. Yes. But I do agree with you that the movie up until that third act, when it took the narrative turn, I was interested, but I wasn't completely engaged. Yeah. And then as soon as that hit, I was completely locked in. Yeah. And it made me completely look at the whole movie in a new way, completely new way.
I was just going to say, you came in at a weird scene.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking is I didn't get any backstory. I was just like, this is some weird erratic guy that's yelling at a woman for no reason.
Did you do any research about what you had missed afterwards?
No.
they have a whole history. Like there's a lot to it. Like they're not like strangers. Like
it's a little complicated.
Yeah, see, when I got in there, I was like, this is just some woman that his mom wants him to court, and he's just yelling at her in her own living room with her mom there.
Yeah, no, it was a very strange scene to walk in on. Or to start with.
Yeah, it was weird, but I mean, it worked out, I guess.
Yeah, but let's talk a little bit about George Bailey as a character. And first of all, James Stewart is phenomenal in this movie. I'm sure many, many, many people have given him high praise for this movie, but he is great in this film. I thought he just did a great job, and I thought he did a really great job of embodying this character. And we saw over the years from when he was like, what was it? He was probably like 18 when we first met the James Stewart incarnation of the character, up until he's like middle-aged. I feel like that he brought a lot of subtle transformation to his character. And you could tell that the character who he was in when he was 18 was a very different person than he was at the end of the film right before he jumps off the bridge. And while I don't think the writing of the character and the writing of the film necessarily brought a radical change to the character, I think James Stewart kind of brought his own character transformation and character evolution. And I think in definitely a very nuanced and subtle way, as James Stewart would do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to raise, especially due to the fact that if you watch a lot of those old movies, you don't get that.
Yeah.
Because, film acting was theater acting back then.
Yes.
You didn't get that as much. You didn't get this whole story and a character really changing inside.
Yeah.
You really have that with this movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of internalization in this film.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, at the start of the film industry, it was all, the acting mindset was all theater acting. And just taking theater actors, and they thought if you just put cameras on them and they're acting theater acting, it's going to be fine. But it wasn't fine because you need a level of subtlety and nuance when it comes to film performance. And in the case of It's a Wonderful Life, I guess I hadn't even thought about it until you mentioned it just now. For 1946, for James Stewart's performance to be as nuanced and as subtle and as internal as it is, and for it not to be this big, grandiose, over-the-top performance, as you would expect from a classically trained theater actor.
Yep.
It's staggering, his performance. And
he's very good.
He is great, even by today's standards.
He just earned himself more brownie points.
Yeah. Even by today's standards, he's a great performance, but even putting in the context of 1946, it's an even better performance.
And I think you can see how good of an actor he is by juxtaposing him to the other actors in the film.
Yeah.
Such as Mary.
Yeah.
She's a little bit more out there. She's kind of in your face with her acting.
Yeah. I could be wrong, but I think that might have been her first film performance.
Well, then she did damn good for her first film performance. I think you might
could
be
wrong
right.
on that, though.
I think you might be right because I remember checking out, of course, her Wikipedia, and there weren't a lot of movies on there. I think It's a Wonderful Life was her first.
Yeah.
But, kind of juxtaposing James Stewart to everyone else, he was very good.
Yeah.
And we can't expect anything from the old heads. They were made for theater. They were born in 1874, man.
Yeah. But no, I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind when thinking about this film is the background of the actors and where their training comes from. And for James Stewart's performance to be as nuanced and as internal as it is, I think that's very impressive.
Talented man.
And I think I really like George Bailey as a character. And I mentioned that James Stewart brought this kind of through his performance a character arc. But I think the character does evolve throughout the film. And I like how he starts off as this very ambitious, optimistic person. And then over the course of the film, the weight of the world and the reality of life kind of sets in. And by the end of the film, well, not the end of the film, but before he jumps off the bridge or he's ready to jump off the bridge, he's become a very cynical person.
Yeah.
He feels like all hope is lost, and all this optimism that he had in the very beginning of the movie. He wanted to build things. He wanted to travel the world. Yeah. All of that is gone. And I think it's interesting to think of it as when he was 18, he wanted to travel the world and he wanted to build big things, and that's what he wanted his life to be like. And when you see what his life is like in the present, when he has a family and everything, he hasn't done all that. He hasn't traveled the world. He hasn't reached these career ambitions that he had. And I think he as a character is kind of thinking that he's restricted by having a family, by having a wife, and all these things that he sees as keeping him back. And because I decided to start a family, I couldn't do this. And because I decided to do this, I couldn't do that. But through looking at the world of what the world is like without him, he comes to realize that that's really what makes him happy.
Yeah.
And that he wasn't settling by having a family. He was just choosing what he really wanted to do, and he was kind of like growing into his own.
I think a really interesting change in this movie on your subject was in the beginning, right after him and Mary get married, and Mary married, and he fixes does he do like building insurance?
I'm not exactly sure.
It was really weird. I don't know what it was, but
what they do?
What his company was.
It's a loan. So I think they do building and loan. They build houses, and I think they loan money to people to build them.
Okay. That makes sense.
They build the houses for them, and I think that may be the loan. And, they pay them to build it, and then.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So they have this business, and he fixes the business, right? He saves it because everybody's going to go to Mr. Potter and all that. And then by the end, when the business has another almost life-ending hiccup, he does one thing and it fails because he tries to go find the money that was lost, and it fails, and he doesn't get creative and he doesn't care, and then he goes and tries to kill himself.
Yeah.
And I think that shows how his life kind of made him grow weary and cynical and tired because he didn't have that spark of creativity. He didn't care to even go out and try another thing.
Yeah.
Immediately went to Mr. Potter.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I think that kind of ties all in with he thought the wrong things were what was keeping him back.
Yep.
And he thought, I think the whole lengthy scene of him going about his house and yelling at all of his kids and getting frustrated, I think that
I hated that scene. So, like, I loved it as a scene, but I just hated watching that.
Yeah.
When he's, like, yelling at their teacher.
Yeah,
And then the husband.
When I think about it, that was a really great escalation within a scene for his character. It felt very natural. I was kind of afraid that was going to feel like it came out of left field of him just, the movie needs him to get angry at his kids to make everything else feel stronger. But it's very natural escalation within the scene. How he goes from just being frustrated to getting angry to smashing and breaking things, and then immediate remorse and guilt, and then leaves. And it was very well done.
He did kind of look bodily goofy when he like ripped apart and like kicked that thing. He just looked like a goofball because he's kind of lanky. Yeah, and like
he's a lanky person.
He's kind of lanky and really skinny. He's a beanpole, and he's just like kicking down this big school project or something.
Something along those lines.
Yeah, and it was like, okay, buddy. He was kind of funny. The table that it was on just broke really easily, and it just made me kind of giggle to myself. That was a solid wood table. He rips his jacket arms off, and it's just like Arnold arms.
But I think we're touching up on this. So when we have in the middle of the film, when George and his company starts handing out all the money, and he's giving out his personal money to all these people who need money, and he's like, how much do you need? $20? Okay, $20 you get. And he's like handing out all the money.
That one guy that was like, I want my $242, and it just seems like a real jerk.
Yeah, I don't like that guy.
And George Bailey did it. Yeah, he gave it to him,
and that was his honeymoon money, dude. He was like a nice guy.
And then at
super sweet old lady. Yeah. It's like, I need about $17.50.
Yep. Oh, love that lady. She's my queen.
And where it hit me in the movie, where I started to feel it, was at the end of the film when all those people come in with the money, and when he needed the money, they gave it to him because he had helped them in their time of need, and they were there to help him in his time of need. When I saw how that came full circle, like I felt it. Like I was like, that is so beautiful.
I think that obviously warmed my cold dead little heart for a little bit, but I think the one thing that like it made me angry and sad and like tired, maybe a little hungry.
That's a range of emotions.
It was too much. It was when he had never been born, and he was in the bar, and I don't even know who the guy was, but apparently he was important to the story.
The beggar?
Yeah, the beggar came in, and everybody was just so mean to him, and I just felt like, I was like, I'm gonna start crying if I see people being mean to a homeless man more. Yeah. Like, I hate that.
Yeah, that was his employer.
Yeah.
When he was a kid, his job.
Okay, so maybe you can explain this for me, because I didn't understand the whole poison element of the movie. Because in the beginning, when George is a kid, and he stops the guy, his boss, who's drunk, I didn't understand what had happened.
Why
with
was
the
he trying to kill
kids?
Honestly, I can't tell you. I don't think I probably have looked into it before, but I don't remember. I think he was just gonna just poison,
Well, I get the basics of
Jim
what
Jones.
it needed for the movie, but I didn't understand exactly what was happening. Like, he accidentally was going to poison kids by accident,
he
and then
drunk?
George stopped it. Yeah, I think so. I think because it was a drugstore, and I think
Well, he was
Oh.
well, it was. I think it was not maybe not totally that he was just drunk, but he was upset because
his son had died from
Oh.
influenza,
Yeah.
and
See,
so
he was trying to get them all to go to sleep, so he was going to give them melatonin gummies, but he mixed them up with the arsenic gummies.
Honestly, I don't think I've ever really
it,
considered it. There's a reason for it, but
yeah, that just confused me because I understood the point of
I
it.
think at one point they say when he was homeless, like when he
Mm-hmm.
was like, because he said that he went to prison.
Yeah, for poisoning kids.
Poisoning a kid. So I think it was either a mistake that he just accidentally
Yeah.
poisons a kid, and that's why. He goes.
Yeah, and George
know-
stops, but I just didn't know how.
Yeah.
How do you accident? Maybe I don't understand because it was within the context of 1946, but I don't know how you accidentally sneak poison into
Yeah.
pills or what. That I just didn't understand the details of that.
In the movie, they say he poisoned multiple children, and all I'm asking is, how did he get out of jail at all if he poisoned multiple children to be a beggar, to get treated unfairly at a bar? I'm just wondering, if a man kills one child, let alone multiple children.
Well, they might not have died. They might have been poisoned without dying. So, one thing I wanted to bring up about this film is that I think the film runs a risk of maybe being a little too heavy-handed at times with its messages and with its themes. And I wonder if anyone else kind of had this or felt this sentiment. Would you say that maybe the themes and the messages of this movie, and albeit it is 1946, and so they haven't necessarily perfected the craft of subtlety in filmmaking, but would you say the themes are a little too heavy-handed?
Yes.
I think specifically to the very end of the movie when he's holding the book and you have the note from Clarence,
Yeah.
and it just flat out says what the movie is saying the theme is, and
Yeah.
I'm doing this based on memory. This might not be the exact wording, but it was something along the lines of a man cannot be a failure if he has friends,
Yeah, so,
is what the Clarence's note said in the book.
yeah, they did not know what subtlety was in this movie.
In some cases they did, like with James Stewart's performances.
Yeah,
would
I
say.
think that might have been more James Stewart
Yeah.
himself working. Because when you look at this movie, it was kind of, in the plot-wise, it was grandiose. It was big. It was, everybody came to his house at the end and gives him all
Yeah.
this money. Everybody in the town shows up at this man's house.
I think that kind of fits in with more the fantastical nature of it, but
Yeah.
yes, I understand. your
And
point.
then, yeah, the book thing is really big.
Yeah.
He could have picked up that book. I also didn't like that he was like an old friend. Like, I felt like he didn't have to say anything.
he just met him like 3 hours ago.
Yeah, like, you don't know this guy. That could have been your weird old uncle, if for all you know.
Yeah.
Generally, I think, obviously, I like this movie and everything. I've said that. But I think that the book thing was really kind of a goofy scene. It was clunky. It
Yeah.
wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
The book being there, I think maybe a more subtle thing would have been just put the book on a shelf
Yeah.
behind them or something.
Yeah. And I do have to say, I think, like we were just saying, it is 1946. They
Yeah.
haven't perfected the craft
Yeah,
of
they have
how
not
to
honed their skills.
exactly.
By any means.
So I think you kind of, with these earlier film era, well, movies within this earlier part of the film history, you have to kind of accept that, and you kind of have to get past that. Same thing with like
Yeah.
the theater based acting. You kind of
Yeah.
have to just understand that and get past that when watching movies from the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, maybe even into the 50s and 60s.
Yep. On that note, I like with the era of this movie, I would like to bring up how it was not very political. And I love that because less than 10 years earlier, Judy Garland did blackface.
Yeah.
And in It's a Wonderful Life, it was mainly white and whatever, but that was expected. There was one woman of color.
Yeah.
But
And she wasn't like
she wasn't
depicted in any sort of
as-
derogatory way.
Yeah,
I thought
she was a nice woman.
Yeah.
She was shown as part of the family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like, she was joking with them, and the whole thing with like,
Yeah.
if you want to sit and listen in, you can right here.
Yeah.
She was she was a person
Yeah.
in this movie. And I'm really glad that was an aspect of it because it made the movie timeless, I think. It
Yeah.
made it so you can watch this and you don't have to get angry at the movie.
Yeah. It doesn't, it's not one of those movies that has that part where everyone's like, okay, this is the part, everyone's just got to ignore this part
Yeah.
to get going
Everybody
with the rest
look
of the
at your
movie.
phone for a
It's
couple
an-
minutes.
It's an old movie.
Yeah.
It's just how it was.
It's not a movie that comes with a preface, you know.
Yeah,
you can,
exactly.
And I agree with you, and I think that's the perfect way to put it. It helps make it timeless,
Mm-hmm.
is that it doesn't, and in that it doesn't necessarily ascribe a time period to this. I mean, obviously, if you look at the cars and the clothing and
Yeah.
everything, it's very clearly early 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms, it doesn't have these really racist or really sexist parts.
Yeah, they didn't objectify women that much in it, which I
There
liked.
were there were a couple moments.
I might have missed some.
There were a couple moments that I think in the 40s went over better than today. They weren't
Yeah.
anything like egregious, but there
Yeah.
were just some of the things that are said or the way the men looked at the women or the kind of
yeah.
moments.
What was her name? Not Mary, the other one, the other girl who was also like she liked George Bailey. And
Yeah, I don't remember her name.
Oh, yeah, they kind of depicted her as like a promiscuous woman, if you will.
Yeah.
She was very, I don't know the best way of wording it, but like that's the scene where like they're all looking at her and then she
Walking
walks
down the
away.
street. Yeah.
And then the guy's like, oh, I gotta go home and see what the life's up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that was
Yeah.
kind of like that was the comedy. It was like, oh, it's funny because an attractive woman walks down the street and all the men start looking at her as she walks away, and the guy who's walking past her turns around and looks, and then the car comes right up, and you know that was kind of that was just played for laughs in the 40s,
Yeah.
innocently enough then. Today we look at it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say there are any radical things in this film
Yeah.
that like make it hard to watch.
I
There are
had
little
liked-
moments where it shows its
Yeah.
age.
I had liked that they gave Mary a story instead of her just being like, "Oh, yeah, this is his wife now."
Yeah, she's not the wife.
she's not
she's
the
a
wife.
character.
Yeah, she's not. I didn't really like that idealistic part where he comes home and she has this like perfectly set up turkey dinner. That was
Rotated with.
with the record player.
record player.
First of all, that woman's a genius and didn't get any credit for it, but I like that she did get a little bit of story.
Yeah.
Because that was not the norm for 1946.
Yeah, no, there was more to her. She wasn't just
She was
the
a woman of
nameless wife.
substance.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that kind of helps with how you put it, adds to the timelessness of it.
Yeah.
That we today in 2018 aren't going to watch this movie and go, ugh. You
Yeah.
know, we can watch it and maybe there are a couple of parts that if it was made today, they wouldn't necessarily be in there. They would have been done a little bit differently. But I think every movie has that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, which I think well, actually, first, Matt, I wanted to get your thoughts on this whole thing of, do you think the themes and messages in It's a Wonderful Life are too heavy-handed, or do you think they handle it well enough?
I don't know. When I think of Christmas movies, I feel like that is something that comes with it. Like the themes are there and they're very prevalent. I didn't necessarily I wasn't put off by it, like the
Yeah.
book, or maybe it's because I've seen it so many times. But
Yeah.
when it's like, oh, he's an old friend, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he's accepted everything, and it's like the ending, and everyone's emotional. So I think at least the ending, it was maybe a little overdone, but I think it was all right.
It's just playing on sappiness.
Yeah.
Like, this is the big. Everyone's emotional. You're probably crying at this point, so you don't need to anyway.
Exactly.
I started crying once the beggar got yelled at. I was clocked then.
This is a question I would like to hear Connor Murphy's opinion on, because
Good
he's
old Connor
definitely an
Murphy.
advocate for not having heavy-handed themes and messages. Let's transition into what I think is a really important and interesting thing to talk about when talking about It's a Wonderful Life, and that is its legacy as a Christmas film, because it wasn't always a Christmas classic. And it became a classic in a very non-expected way. And if people already know this, bear with me, but I'm going to say it anyways. So, It's a Wonderful Life first came out in 1946. And the movie, when it came out, bombed. Nobody went and saw this. Nobody paid any attention to it. It came and it went.
I mean, can you blame them, though? I wouldn't go see it.
Oh, you did just watch it?
Yeah, like, I enjoy it now, but if I saw a trailer on my new
In a world.
TV...
But anyways, so the movie came out in 46. Nobody went and saw it. Complete flop. It only became a classic because the rights to the film lapsed in 1974, the broadcast rights. And so suddenly there was this movie that all these TV stations could use, or all meaning 3, the TV stations could use and play for free. And so what they did was they started playing It's a Wonderful Life for free on TV nonstop. And so then this whole new generation of people in 74 who had never heard of this movie, they knew nothing about it. It was this obscure movie nobody knew about from 1946, suddenly became a Christmas classic because it was just played on TV so constantly.
If you want to make a parallel to that, you can think of, like, A Christmas Story now.
Yeah.
Like, because they just play that 24 hours on Christmas Christmas Eve. You've got that, but in 1974 when they did not have A Christmas Story.
Well, I think what's interesting is that I think in the case of A Christmas Story and Movie Night Tonight, we'll be talking about Christmas Story later in the month of December.
I didn't know we were doing that.
Well, I think we'll be on break before it happens, but Movie Night Tonight we'll be discussing It's a Christmas Story.
Not us.
But I think in the case of A Christmas Story, that's very clearly a Christmas movie intended for Christmas. In the case of It's a Wonderful Life, I feel like this is only associated as a Christmas film because TV stations started playing it around Christmas time. Mm-hmm. I mean, other than the fact that the very end of the movie takes place on Christmas Day, this isn't really a Christmas movie.
It's not.
No, I think it's the same case as Die Hard. Die Hard isn't a Christmas movie just because it takes place on Christmas.
Need to bring up the whole Die Hard thing just for a second.
Yes.
Every time you meet someone and you say, oh, what's your favorite Christmas movie? And they're like, Die Hard. You know they're going to be the worst person you've ever met. You know they're just going to suck. You're going to be like, you're going to talk to them for 5 minutes and you're just going to be like, shut up. Stop talking about Bruce Willis.
It's a really original joke.
See, people try to make the whole Die Hard thing a debate, and it's not a debate. There's nothing to debate. Die Hard is not a Christmas movie.
Die Hard isn't a Christmas. Christmas is in it, but it's not a Christmas movie.
Exactly. You have A Christmas Story is a Christmas movie.
It has Christmas in the freaking name.
Well, because within that movie's fundamental DNA, if you take Christmas out of A Christmas Story, it's not a movie anymore. If you take Christmas out, like say you take A Christmas Story and say you made it an Easter story, and you changed the holiday and it's Easter now, it's not the same movie.
It's arguably Easter already because he has a bunny costume.
Yeah, essentially. But if you take Die Hard, and you change it to Easter, it doesn't make any difference. Maybe you have to change 1 or 2 jokes. That's it. It doesn't change the DNA of the movie. So there is no debate. Die Hard is not a Christmas movie. It may be a fun, and if people out there who are listening have Die Hard as a Christmas tradition and every year they watch Die Hard, that's great. I'm not knocking.
I am.
I'm not knocking that at all. I'm not knocking that at all.
I am.
And I want to have Die Hard be a Christmas tradition for me because I should watch that movie more often because that's a great film.
Sorry,
but
I want It's a Wonderful Life to be a Christmas tradition for me.
But I think It's a Wonderful Life is kind of within the same vein. I think, yes, does the very end of the movie take place during Christmas? Yes, but I don't think Christmas and the spirit of Christmas and the holiday itself is necessarily part of the DNA of the film. And so I think the only reason we kind of associate it as a Christmas classic and a holiday classic is because in 74 they start playing it around Christmas and then people just like tuned in like, oh, we know every year we're going to tune in around Christmas time and It's a Wonderful Life is going to play. And then decade after decade that happens. And before you know it, It's a Wonderful Life is known as one of the great Christmas movies of all time.
Yeah. I'm like, It's okay.
I'm thinking maybe a little bit with the angels and the sort of magic part at the end where you learn about family and.
Well, I mean, angels aren't necessarily unique to Christmas.
Yeah, but it's kind of fits the. You know, I think the little bit of the magical quote unquote part is kind of.
It works. All right, let me phrase it this way. It works well as a Christmas movie, and I don't knock it as a Christmas film, but I don't think Christmas and the themes and the spirit of Christmas itself and the holiday season are necessarily an inherent and central part of the film. I think it just, like, it does, is there definitely some Christmas spirit in it, especially at the very end of the movie? Yes. But I don't think of It's a Wonderful Life, having seen it now, I don't think of it necessarily as a through and through Christmas movie as I would say a Christmas Story.
Yeah.
So that's more my point on it. I think I think it's more of a Christmas movie than Die Hard.
Yeah,
I think
because Die Hard isn't a Christmas movie.
Yeah, but I would say I don't think of this. I think it's a Christmas classic.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a Christmas movie.
When I look
That's
at It's
how
a
I'll
Wonderful
put it.
Life, I'm just saying that if you took that Christmas tree out of that house, it would just be a normal December day.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's fine. You can have a movie set in December, but you never have a movie set in December without Christmas being involved,
Yeah.
which I think is kind of stupid.
Yeah. If you take out the fact that they say that it is the night before Christmas, if you take that out,
There's
exact same movie.
exactly. It's the same
All
thing.
it is snow.
Yeah.
Christmas could have been like
And
the
yeah.
next day.
And if it was
Yeah.
Massachusetts, it could have been October for all
Yeah,
we knew.
exactly.
So,
If you go into the Adirondacks or the Berkshires, it's September and it's
Yeah.
snowing, dude. It doesn't matter.
It's September 20th, and we're expecting about 6 inches of snow.
Yeah, no.
it's the night
my dad-
before Halloween.
My
and-
dad went to college in the Adirondacks, and 3 weeks after they got to college, it would snow. And it would be like a foot on the ground. So I'm not convinced that It's a Wonderful Life did that great of a job on showing it's Christmas because they didn't need to.
Yeah. Furthermore, evidence of why it's not inherently a Christmas movie.
It's not.
It's a
I
Christmas
agree.
classic, and
But
I'm
it's
not
not a
knocking
Christmas
that.
movie.
Exactly. And
I agree with you,
so-
Nathanael Molnár.
So that is my point on that. But I definitely think it's more of a Christmas movie than
That's
Die
the hot
Hard.
take, if
Yes.
you
If I want anyone to take anything away from this episode, it is It's a Wonderful Life is not a Christmas movie, and if you think it's a Christmas movie, you should burn in hell.
Twitter hot take, you should rot if you think
Yes.
A Wonderful Life is a
Yes.
Christmas movie.
Watch Die Hard.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a real Christmas movie.
So, as we bring the show to a close, I'd like to go around real quick and say what our final impressions of It's a Wonderful Life is, starting with Julia.
So I love this movie, and I also like that all of you agree that it's not a Christmas movie because it's not. I absolutely love the acting in this movie, and as I've said so many times, I brought it up a couple times last night, I'm in love with that it's not political. Mm-hmm. It makes me happy as a Christmas clam.
Yeah, it's just a warm, wholesome film.
It is a warm, wholesome film, and I can't complain. It's got all the 9 grains that I need.
Yep. Matt Smith, final thoughts.
I don't know. I feel like I've just like seen this movie so many times, and it's like of like the old movies that everyone says you should see, or like the movies that like people are like, oh no, you haven't seen that movie. I feel like it's probably like my favorite one of those that I don't mind seeing time and time again.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's just good.
I'm glad to have finally knocked it off my list because it's definitely one of those that you say you have not seen It's a Wonderful Life, and
Yeah, and
people go,
everybody's like, "Ugh!"
you haven't seen A Wonderful Life? Nathaniel, you're such a film fan. How have you not seen It's a Wonderful Life? And I'm like, I just haven't.
Big ol' eye roll.
Well, now you're allowed to gasp when other people haven't.
Yeah, now
Sorry,
I
I'm
get
not
to be
that
one
guy.
of them. I've turned from the gaspee to the gasper.
Welcome to the
The Gatsby. The Great Gatsby.
Yep. So, anyways, yes.
Yeah,
Those are
it's very, very good. You like watching it around Christmas time.
yeah. And I would like to adopt this as a new Christmas movie that I watch because I definitely am interested in like it. Yes, quote unquote Christmas.
Christmas movie.
But my final thoughts of the film are I definitely want to see it again because, like I mentioned earlier, I had a very different impression of the movie the first 2 acts than I did the third act. And so maybe I'm just riding the high of the third act and I was like so swept up in the moment and the emotion of it that maybe I'm looking at the whole movie in a more favorable way than I would have a second time.
Yeah, maybe it's a garbage movie.
I don't know if I would necessarily think that.
What if you watch it a second time and you make another podcast and you go, I retract everything I've said. It's a Wonderful Life is a terrible movie.
The second viewing changes everything. Everything.
And I will never watch this movie again. I'm going to start a change.org petition to take it off all of media.
It's a
gone.
Wonderful Life makes me want to jump off a bridge. But I want to give it another viewing, definitely at the very least one more. But I really liked this movie. I really enjoyed it. I liked the fantastical element, and I liked how it balanced the fantasy of the story as well as the real-life drama elements of it. I really liked the way that the story was told through this very interesting narrative direction. James Stewart's fantastic in this movie, and I loved the whole ending and getting to see his life if he hadn't existed. And I just thought all that whole third act I thought was just phenomenal. And I thought it's so perfectly brought the story to a close I just thought that whole part was brilliant. I loved that whole ending.
You know what people probably really like this movie? In terms of movies that are shown around Christmas time, I'm very careful when I say about Christmas movies.
You might get publicly hung.
I know. That it's not happy the whole way through.
Yeah.
Just because it's Christmas time, everyone's supposed to be super happy.
Yeah.
And people aren't always super happy around Christmas time. And then
people need sad lamps during Christmas time too. Christmas lime.
Christmas lime.
It's just it goes back to not being Christmas. It's just a movie.
Yeah.
And, it shows how life is hard.
Yeah.
Even especially around Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's an interview somewhere with director Frank Capra that I don't know about that dispels this, but I look at this movie and I don't think it was ever meant or intended to be a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
It does not feel like it was. I don't think Frank Capra and the writers were sitting down saying, "Oh, we got the next great Christmas movie. It's a Wonderful Life," and they made up this movie.
Well, when I think warm and happy, I think jumping off bridges.
Exactly. When I look at this film, I do not see it in its DNA being made to be a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
I see a movie that came out and was later turned into a Christmas tradition and a Christmas classic.
So I want my final words on this entire ordeal to be, the Polar Express sucked.
And on that note, that has been our discussion of It's a Wonderful Life.
Check out Polar Express next.
Yes.
It sucked.
How great Tom
No.
Hanks is in that.
Polar Express is not the movie next week, but I will be saying in a few minutes what that will be. But once again, I am your host, Nathanael Molnár. Thank you so much for listening. I've been joined by a great panel today. Julia Spots, thanks
Polar
for being
Express
here.
sucks.
Yes. The final thoughts. Of
So
course.
does Die Hard. Die Hard doesn't suck, but it's not a Christmas movie.
Not a Christmas movie. Die Hard is a great film.
Not a Christmas movie doesn't suck.
Matt Smith, thank you for being here.
It's always a pleasure.
And so the movie we're talking about next week is we're going to be talking about Home Alone, a fun-filled Christmas film. That's going to be a fun one to talk about, so I'm looking forward to
Wait,
that
what are
one.
we doing?
Home Alone.
Oh,
next
I'll be
week.
there.
Yes. So, Home Alone. You can check that out next week. Thanks everyone for listening. You like, comment, subscribe for more content, please, and
Subscribe
check
to
us
PewDiePie.
out. Check us out on.
Series win.
Check us out on all of our social medias at Movie Night TNT. That's Movie Night TNT, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. There you can find the link. And all of our previous episodes are up on YouTube, they're on Spotify, they're on iTunes. You can watch and listen to all of them there. So thanks for listening, and until next week when we talk about Home Alone, thanks everyone.